In our previous video, we learned how to calculate phase shift and vertical shift, as long as reviewing how to calculate amplitude and period. In this video, we're going to take that information that we calculated last time and graph. Like we did before, we're going to first start by labeling our axes based on the period and the amplitude. And then there's going to be a little bit of extra that comes into play because of that vertical shift and phase shift, as we'll see later. But moving right here, our period is 2 pi over 3. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 2 pi over 3. So that would mean that's pi over 3. And if I were to look down at the cosine graph, I'm going to take my period, which is 4 pi. And again, it's 4 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that makes that 4 pi. So if 4 pi is 4 tick marks, then 1 tick mark must be pi. So that's 2 pi here. Now vertically, I can see in this case that my amplitude is 2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll count up by ones here because it's a nice whole number. If it was a fraction, maybe I would count up by fraction, that fraction. And down here the amplitude is 1, so I'll just count up by 1. Alright, so now I've made my grid. Now what I need to do is essentially create my new sort of starting place for my wave. So before, we based everything essentially around the origin. We weren't shifting anywhere, so everything started there. Now we're going to need to shift it and start in a new place. This is what I'm going to do for illustration. You can certainly do it when you're graphing. Is I'm going to create sort of a pseudo origin. I'm going to do so in a red pen, and I'm going to dash it to kind of indicate that this isn't my graph. This is just sort of me sort of orienting myself to where I've now moved the graph. So if I look at my shifts, here's my phase shift. Here's my vertical shift. Again, phase shift is phi, vertical shift is d. So phase shift is a left-right shift. It's horizontal. D is our vertical shift. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move right, because that's positive, pi over 3. And then I'm going to move up, because that's also positive 1. So if I move right to pi over 3 and up 1, that's here. And what I'm going to do at that point is create some dashed lines here as my sort of new origin from which to base this graph. Now you don't have to do this, but this is what I do to kind of help guide those sort of interactions that we've learned in the past. All right, now down here to do the same thing, I'm going to go, okay, well, what's my phase shift? My phase shift is pi, so that means a right pi, which is this first tick mark. And then my vertical shift is -2, so down 2. So right pi, down 2. There's now my new sort of origin, pseudo-origin of this wave that's been shifted around. Now all I need to do is remember the pattern. Okay, so sine starts at the origin and then moves up to its peak every tick mark. But my origin's moved, so now it's going to start here. Instead of starting here, because it's been shifted, it's going to start here. And then it's going to move up to its peak. Well, how high is its peak? Well, it's 2 up. So if I'm starting at 1, I'm going to end at 3 because I moved 2 up. I'm going to move up to here, but 1 tick mark over, I'm going to do that. So in the next step, so I'm going to go up, then back to the middle. And so this dashed line now is this nice new midline I can base everything off of. Now I need to go down to the bottom. Well, that's down 1, 2. That's down to here at the next tick mark. And so you can see that now I'm going to continue that pattern. And I'm going to continue it both directions. And once I have that pattern, I can go ahead and graph my sine graph. Let's see that in action with cosine down here. So with cosine, I don't actually start at the origin. Remember, you started at the peak and then came back down to that midline. And so in this case, instead of starting right here, which is our sort of new pseudo-origin, I'm going to start at its peak. How far up is its peak? Well, its amplitude is 1. So I'm going to go up 1 from there, and I'm going to draw a dot. And then cosine comes down to the middle, next tick marker over, down to the middle, and then to the bottom, middle, top, and so on. Okay, graphing with phase shift and vertical shift is going to take some practice. If you're going to learn it and learn how to do it so you can apply it to the project, you're going to need to spend some time in it. So in this week's webinar, we're going to actually have some time where I pause, have you practice, and so that we can have some go-between and help you figure this out. I'll see you soon.